Hello, welcome back to the channel. And if you've been following this channel for a while, you'll know that I look at my own experience of using green technology such as solar panels, batteries, electric vehicles, and hopefully soon a heat pump as well. But one of the questions that I get asked, and also that other YouTubers try and cover, is what the investment potential is in these technologies. And this is from your own personal investment in your own home. And what's the best option? Should you go for solar panels? Should you go for solar panels and battery, which is the most common? Should you go for just a battery? Should you go for an EV with a battery? Which one gives the best return on any investment? So before I go on, if you can hit the subscribe button, it will be a massive help to the channel. So whenever we talk about investment, it's quite difficult to do the full calculations because there are lots of factors to take into account, such as depreciation, inflation, what would happen if you put your money into a high rate bond, or if you invested on the stock market, are you averse to risks, or this sort of thing. And also when we're talking about green energy and we're talking about things like solar panels, it depends on how many solar panels you have, how much energy your house uses, when you use that energy, and so forth. So everything I've done here is based on a couple of assumptions, which I'll talk through throughout the video, and I'll explain what calculations I'm doing throughout the video. So if you want to make it more tailored to yourself, you can do your own calculations. So what I have assumed is that a house uses 10 kilowatt hours of electricity a day, which means it would use over a year 3,650 kilowatt hours. And if you were to pay the price cap, which I've put down as 24 pence, that would mean that every year you would be spending £876 on electricity import. And that obviously excludes the standing charge, because no matter what technology you get, you still will probably have to pay the standing charge, although that might be changing from recent Ofwat announcements. The other assumption that I've made is, in the case of a vehicle, you drive 10,000 miles a year, and if you fill up with petrol or diesel, that you're paying roughly 15 pence a mile, which is what you would pay if you had a diesel doing about 50 miles to the gallon. So if you did 10,000 miles in a petrol or diesel car at a cost of 15p a mile, it would cost you £1,500. So that means your total for your electricity and your fuel for your car would come to a total of £2,376. So throughout this video, what I'll do is show the savings relative to those amounts. So let's start off with a battery. And I'm going to assume for this video that you can get a battery which covers your entire day's usage. So it's assuming a 10 kilowatt hour battery. I know some days you might use more, in which case I'm assuming that if you go onto a time of day tariff, you will be able to move some of your usage to the cheaper times. So I'm assuming that you buy a 10 kilowatt hour battery with the inverter, get it all fitted, and that will cost around £4,000. Maybe a little bit more depending on the battery, maybe a little bit less. So we've got a £4,000 battery system, and I'm going to assume that you go on to Octopus Flux. And this is a tariff which gives you, well, where I'm putting my own address here in Swansea. So if you were on Octopus Flux, there is 3 hours in the night where you can import at 14.7 pence. So I've assumed that you will fill your battery up fully overnight, and then you'll discharge that through the day to use your 10 kilowatt hours, so you've got no peak or daytime import. And I'm assuming that you can drain your battery all the way down to zero as well. So if you were doing that, then you're at 14.7p, your 3,650 kilowatts hours would cost you £536.55. So that would save you, compared to just importing everything at 24p, that would save you £339. Which means that if you were to look at that from a point of view of your an investment, so like yield per year, so we divide that saving of £339 by the initial outlay of £4,000 for the battery, that would give you a general return of 8.5%. It would also take you no, it wouldn't. So I've just realised there's a mistake in my spreadsheet, so just correct that. And it would take you 11.8 years to pay back your battery, and then anything after that would be profit. Of course, you could argue that after that amount of time, your battery's starting to degrade, so it might be due an upgrade anyway, and you might have to reach the end of the lifetime of an inverter as well. So, as I say, lots of assumptions, but just based on this, just to recoup your £4,000 investment would take just under 12 years, assuming no other changes. Okay, so that's a battery. So then let's look at the most popular combination, which is a battery and solar. So again, I'm going to assume a 10 kilowatt hour battery, and I'm going to assume 10 solar panels. If you want to see a video, I've linked just up here. This will show the calculations of what the worst case scenario is if you want to do a quick calculation for payback on solar panels. So again, if you have a battery and solar panels, you can take advantage of Octopus Flux. So this time, again, you would be charging your battery at the cheap rate and then exporting your solar during the day. So again, your savings on your electricity, if you fill the battery fully overnight and just use the battery throughout the day, would be that same £339.45 from just having a battery. But with a solar system, you can also export any electricity. So what I've assumed from this is if you have 10 panels and each one generates 350 watt hours per year, which is the average given by Google for the UK, and you get an export rate which averages about 19p per kilowatt hour. Again, that's based on flux. So with flux you get paid about 14p for most of the day, but there's a high peak in between 4 and 7. So if you took advantage of energy trading, so you discharge your battery and charged it at certain times. So this number of your seg rate of 19p is variable, but I think over a year it probably averages out to about that. That means you'd get a total seg payment for the 3,500 kilowatt hours you would export of £665. So if we add the £339 to that 665, that means in a year you would get a total payback of £1,004, which then, if we calculate that as a percentage of the total investment, and I'm assuming a total investment of about £9,500, because you can get for about £8,500 you can get 10 solar panels and a 5 kilowatt hour battery, so I've added an extra £1,500 for a bigger battery system, which again I think is reasonable. That means if you take that 1,004 and divide it by your 9,500, times it by 100, get your percentage. That means your yearly percentage yield will be 10.57%, which is much better than just having a battery by itself. If we look at the payback period, it would work out at about 9.5 years to pay back that £9,500, and then after that the money would be profit. So we can see that having solar panels and battery is better than just battery. So now let's look at an unusual combination. So this one requires a lot of assumptions being made, and that is, once you get an EV and a battery. And the reason why this is at all viable is because if I'm going for, again, on Octopus products here, if you have an EV with a charger which is compatible with Octopus, you can get Octopus Intelligent Go, which charges you just 7p for import during the night, or for 6 hours during the night. So that means if you charged your 10 kilowatt hour battery at that 7p per night, it means your electricity bill for the year would be just £255, which is a saving of £620. On top of that, you can also be making savings on your fuel. So let's just say you do the same 10,000 miles and your car has enough range that you don't ever have to charge with public charging, which I know is a bit of an assumption, but let's say that you managed to do that, and let's say that your car averaged 3.5 miles per kilowatt hour. That would mean that you would need to put into the car 2,875 kilowatt hours. And at 7p per kilowatt hour, that costs you just £200, or 2 pence per mile. So that's a seventh of the price of petrol, which means you would have a yearly saving on your fuel bill of £1,300, which means that your yearly saving, so this is your electricity for district general house use, and your fuel would total £1,920. But then we have to talk about the cost of the initial investment in the first place. So the battery would still cost the same, it would still cost £4,000. But then how much does an EV cost? And how do you calculate that cost? So I just went on Powerlease, which is where I bought my Tesla from, and had a quick scan on there of something like an MG5, which I think is a reasonable size family car. And they had a 60 kilowatt hour one with about 50,000 miles on the clock. So that would be good for just over 200 miles at least. And it was about £13,000. Of course, you could trade in your old car, you might be in the market for a new car. So whether this £13,000 is the true investment, that's, I don't know, that's what for you to consider. We don't know what the depreciation on the car will be, but again, you have an asset that you can sell on. So that means you have a total investment of £17,000. That's £13,000 for the car and £4,000 for the battery. I did look at other cars on there, and you get ZS's, you can get even some Teslas, so some high mileage Model 3 standard ranges for around the £13,000 to £14,000 mark, again if you look on Auto Trader. You could even buy like a really cheap electric car, something like a Nissan Leaf or a Zoe, which has a much shorter range, so you might not be doing the same mileage, so which means that your amount you save on petrol might be distorted, but you're paying a lot less. So again, those are the calculations you have to do. So anyway, let's assume you paid a full £17,000 for your investment, and you made back £1,920 a year. That means your percentage yield would be 11.3%. So again, better than solar panels and batteries. And it would take 8.9 years to fully recoup that money from those types of savings, which again is better than solar panels and batteries. Of course, because your car will be deteriorating over time, you may have to renew the car in that time as well, because most people only keep a car for about 4 years. So again, this is part of your own considerations. But it would, just from doing this simple analysis, this would suggest buying an EV and a battery would be better. So then the final combination is what happens if you get all three. What happens if you get EV, solar and a battery system? So again, you could take advantage of the Intelligent Go rates, which means you'll still save that £620 by charging your battery up to full overnight. You would still make the £525 from exporting your 3,500 kilowatt hours of generation. And you would also save the £1,300 of your fuel, which means you'd have a total saving per year of £2,445. But you would also have a total investment of £22,500 because that's your £13,000 from your car and £9,500 from a solar and battery install. So your payback period in this case would be 9.2 years. So more than just having a car and battery, but less than having a solar and battery. And your yearly yield would be 10.87%. So those are the figures that I've sort of just done a quick calculation for on this spreadsheet to have a look through. And I'll put them up all on the screen here for you to do a comparison. As I say, it's difficult to take into account every factor, and everybody's going to be different. So these are only ballpark figures, but it might be something worth considering. Anyway, as I say, please hit the subscribe button. I'm very close to that 1,000 subscribers marks now. So it'll be great to get that before the new year. Anyway, as I say, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video very soon.